Hi everyone, welcome. I've got my VermiBag Tote over here. It's this bag that rests within this plastic tub, and it's a system that I run worms in. The worms that occupy this system are this mixed red worm population. There's like supposedly Indian blue worms, and red wigglers, and European night crawlers, and I don't know what ratio or whatever. So sometimes we see a big fat worm, we assume it's an ENC. Usually when we see big mobbing of worms, we assume that those are probably either the blue worms or the red wigglers. So it's always an interesting bin to check in on. They're a really productive batch of worms. And it's been 10 days now since we last checked in on these guys on their 100-day birthday. And we gave them a variety of interesting foods, but the types of things that I would expect to at least some of them be gone by now to a large degree. I gave them celery, and I bet you those strands of fibers within the celery are still there, but I bet you they've nibbled all the soft stuff away. There's two things that I'm assuming are probably in. There's a couple kiwis. My guess is that those are probably still intact, but we'll see. There was also a turnip from a previous feeding. It was leftovers last time we checked in here. And it was starting to look like it was becoming broken down, but it was still pretty much intact. I'm curious to see how that's coming along. But it was kind of interesting how all these predominance of ones and zeros all sort of lined up for today in terms of the dates and ages and intervals and everything like that. So let's get to feeding these little guys. I got to put on a glove, and then we'll be able to get to work. All right, now we can get down to business. Let's get this plastic out of the way. One thing we did last time was we started removing some of what we thought to be excessive top covering pieces of paper, because besides these couple of pieces of newspaper, there's also a couple sheets of cardboard in here. And then on top of that, there were a couple of coffee filters. So we went ahead and we didn't put the coffee filters back on as top coverings. We sank them down within the feeding area as bedding. And I think we had even talked about possibly giving these sheets of newspaper that same treatment, kind of giving them a little bit of a better opportunity to get broken down rather than just sitting out here on the surface. I'm sure they get a little bit of attention out here, but certainly, probably, I don't know, not certainly, probably not nearly as much as if they were down near the feeding area. I guess we'll be able to use the progress of the two coffee filters that were put in here alongside the feeding last time to see how they're doing. But either way, I'm thinking, probably a good idea to get these two pieces of newspaper down into the feeding area. These two sheets of cardboard are sufficient for us to have as sort of a top covering, I believe. So we'll set these aside, but we'll bring them back when it comes time to apply the food, and then we'll leave ourselves only with those cardboard top coverings. That's pretty good. One thing we've been noticing in this bin was that these two sides that are up against the plastic bin really stay moist. No problems there. We had just found that the two edges where there seems to be some separation of the bag away from the plastic tub, specifically on this side over here, I believe. Not so much here, because here we had tucked in the lid, limiting airflow back there, but over here we saw that there was a pretty good amount of airflow, causing the material out here on the very edge to become a little bit dry. And I would say that it is very slightly dry, very, very slightly dry. For the most part, it's got good dampness to it. And I don't know if that's got something to do with the fact that we did almost soak the material in here with my spray bottle last time we came in here. It was meant to be sort of a preventative measure to prevent that stuff from getting too dry and dried out. So I don't know if we need to apply it again. Maybe we'll just not apply any, and we'll see how it goes. If we have to return to supplementing the moisture out on those edges with the spray bottle, possibly next time we come back in here, we could certainly do that. But I think maybe we'll see if we can get by without. All right. So I was definitely interested in seeing how the kiwis are coming along. A couple other things I was interested in seeing was the turnip. The turnip was, I thought it was right in the middle of the two kiwis. The turnip was actually a leftover from a previous feeding, so it wasn't part of the stuff they got 10 days ago. And I wouldn't be surprised if what I've got in my hand are just the few remnant leftovers of it. Because I'm pretty sure that that's pretty much where it was. Maybe this is more of it, I don't know. I'm pretty sure as far as the location goes, that's where I had placed it. I don't know if there's something here. I bet you, okay, this has got to be parts of the leftover celery. I didn't expect too much of it to be gone yet. I thought, well, I did actually think that it would be kind of stripped clean of the softer material, and perhaps we'd only see strands. But, you know, it's only 10 days that we've given them. There was a couple of these peppers put in here too, so it was like an unusual variety of different things that they got last time. I'm so tempted to burst these open, because once they are open, they start to break down quite nicely. But as long as it doesn't get punctured, the insides remain protected by that tough outer skin. I don't know if you've ever handled a kiwi, but it's got this kind of weird, almost like a peach, sort of a fuzzy sort of a outer skin. And if it doesn't break, the worms can't get in, and it just sits there. So as interesting it is to, like, you know, sort of press the envelope to see how many days you can withstand the breakdown of the materials in the worm bin. I think with a kiwi, it's kind of cheating to not burst it open and give it a fair shot. So I did prepare a few things for them to eat. It does seem like they've taken a pretty good bite out of some of this celery. So I got a feeling that they are nibbling away on what they can, and they'll get to all of it in time as it becomes soft enough for them to break it down. But we do have a good bit of leftover of it, and I think it's, you know, to a large degree just that strandy, fibrous inner material, and that I don't think that there's much of the softer stuff left. I'm sure they'll nibble that away in the next few days, and then that fibrous stuff that remains will continue to get broken down as well, but probably take a little bit more time. And it almost seems excessive if we do burst these two open to also add a bunch of extra food today, but you know what? I got no problem with that. I believe that I'm going to just go for it. I'm going to press the envelope. Is that the right expression? Press the envelope. Push the envelope? Perhaps both are correct. I don't know. Or perhaps both are incorrect. But I think I do want to use all that newspaper that's stacked up over there. Both large sheets. Well, not that large, but both sheets of paper, as well as the food that I set aside for them upstairs. It's strawberry, which I bet ain't going to last long at all. And there's also some cauliflower. All stuff that was frozen but was taken out of the freezer a couple hours ago, so it's become nice and mushy and thawed. And it's probably going to bring with it a good amount of moisture as well. So I think that's the game plan. But before we shoot upstairs to grab those food bits for them, I'm just going to kind of indulge my curiosity just for a moment or two first. Maybe at the same time we could sort of do a quick agitation of all the material in the bin. Kind of blending in some of the more damp stuff near the feeding area with some of these drier bits of material out near the edges. Yeah, why don't we do that? I think that'll help equalize things here. And I think that'll be more than sufficient moisture to ensure that the outer edges of the system are protected from the drying effects of the winter air excessively. If they were feeling any drier, I might come in here with the spray bottle, but now that we're just sort of blending in a lot of the more damp stuff that's down in the middle of the bin, or in the middle of the bag, with the outer reaches, I think we're going to be in pretty good shape here. At least that's how it feels. I guess if we come back in here and we sense dryness along this edge where we've seen it in the past, we can certainly apply some moisture, but there's also the other factor of the ever-increasing amount of castings that the worms keep depositing into the system. As that stuff keeps piling up, the system just becomes more and more impervious to the drying effects of the air. It just has this much more robust capability of maintaining its moisture. So I think we'll take a quick peek on the other side, see if perhaps a little blending of the drier with the more moist materials will benefit this one as well. And then we could go grab them their yummy cauliflower and strawberry meal. Yeah, things look really nice in here. It almost feels like there's no dryness. I really like what I'm seeing in here. The castings look terrific as well. I think that this bin is kind of, or this bag, I keep calling it a bin. I do think this system is kind of at that age where you do start to really see the difference, you know, and you can feel the difference too as you're kind of pouring your fingers through the stuff. You can really tell that there's a difference. That was kind of interesting. It's like the end of a piece of veggie when they've been like probably chewing out all the softer parts of it that they can eat and then leaving whatever part of it that's going to take more time. Those things usually take a little bit of time. Man, this material really is nice, gotta say. But let's stop admiring it. Let's level things off here. And let's reopen the middle again. I think we'll just keep repositioning the feeding right back where we found it, right down in the middle. And we're going to give ourselves a good amount of space in here. Because, like I said, both these sheets of newspaper are going to go in here alongside the food. So I got a feeling it's going to add to the overall size of this whole system considerably. So just got to be careful. I don't want to pour it off the edges. I keep telling myself that one of the main reasons to bring an end to a system is when you feel like you're just being constrained by the limited space in the system. And I don't think that's really what's happening here. I think we're just kind of making a slightly larger than normal opening here because of the anticipated slightly larger than normal feeding we intend to place in here. So let's just rationalize it and not treat it as something wrong. Alright, this is my segue into breaking away for a moment to go grab them their meal, and then we could resume our work here. This stuff is completely thawed out. It's not even cold anymore, so it can go pretty much right on top of a worm if we, you know, wanted to. Lately I've been trying to pay a little bit more attention to not just dumping frozen foods, which is what I typically feed, right on top of any worms. Just trying to be a little bit more considerate, if that makes any sense. So this piece of paper, I'm going to just sort of start stacking all this stuff right in. I thought that maybe the new stuff can go on top and we would place some of the older things down low. Or should we treat the new edition as being most likely to draw a good crowd? I got a feeling that these things are just not going to last whatsoever. So why don't we do this? I want this newspaper to all get a good amount of exposure to the foods that I'm adding. So I thought that I'd start sort of folding it over on top of itself as we keep piling in more and more food. That just seems to me like it's going to give all this stuff a really good chance at being possibly nibbled away. I'm talking about the paper, you know, the paper, you know, when a worm comes by for that delicious chunk of strawberry, they'll be you know, surrounded by the paper, and hopefully also nibble on that while they're at it. So let's see if we can get the next sheet in here. Alrighty. We could just dump right in, you know, right in what remains, since there's not all that much left. But look at all that moisture just kicking off these materials as they thaw. Yeah, you know, there's a good amount of moisture in here, so I don't think we need to worry too much about drying. I guess we'll just stack in the remaining leftovers, but I think it would be a good idea at this point to give these kiwis a chance at being broken down too. So let's at least puncture them. We don't need to go crazy smearing them all over the place. I think that's probably sufficient to get the worms in there and let them start coming by to take advantage of the juices and everything else. And I don't think that all this leftover celery is going to last very much longer either. There's just little scraps of it here and there, but not much at all. All right, that's a nice feeding. Very interesting mix of a good amount of carbon supplement in the form of the newspaper going in hand with not only a number of interesting and probably soon to be eaten leftovers, but also some newly added food items. So we've got just a couple fewer coverings now to help keep the moisture down within the system, but I don't think it really makes that big a difference. The The real king in that realm is the plastic covering, so it doesn't matter how many sheets of paper rest beneath it. In the end, that's what's really doing the job of keeping the moisture down within this system. And the fabric material that the bin is made out of allows for a good amount of breathability, but is luckily doing a good job holding the moisture in, not allowing it to escape. So I think it's fostering the perpetuation of a really comfortable environment for the worms in here. So I think we've got ourselves a pretty good bin that's going to do quite nicely with that last feeding it just received. And then, maybe at some point soon we could start thinking about using these pieces of cardboard down in the feeding area too. They're holding up quite nicely, but I've got a feeling that pretty soon they're going to start getting broken down pretty good too. Even though we've been, providing supplemental bedding and paper, carbon basically, food items for the worms in most occasions, along with their regular kitchen scraps style diet, they could at some point, I assume, start developing a craving for a greater amount of that carbon-based food and might come up for that cardboard and nibble on it a little bit. But at some point soon we might just decide to incorporate that down into the system as well as bedding, and incorporate it into a future feeding, and then we'll really be on the road to having a system that's almost ready for harvest, I think. It's only 110 days old, but as you saw, we don't have a lot of room to work, so it's not a high capacity system. We have been pretty generous on both bedding and food, so that could, contribute to the system filling up a little bit more quickly than normal. So we're not going to force anything. We'll play it, by ear and do what seems best for the bin. But for now, I think we're in good shape. I've just got a couple things I need to clean off and put away here, but I'm not going to waste your time with that. Before I go, let me just really quickly say thank you. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel too. That's also really appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.